of love has sent for me. Now you're singing over me. Your love song. Your love song. Oh, okay. How do we explain? How do we describe love that comes from east to west, runs as deep as is wide? You know all our hopes, you know all our fears. Words cannot express the love we feel, but we long for you to hear. Listen to our hearts, hear our spirits sing. Song of praise that flows from those who are redeemed. We will use the words we know to tell you what an awesome us we are. When words are not enough to tell you of our love, just listen to our heart. Listen to our hearts, hear our spirits sing. Song of praise that flows to those who are redeemed. We will use the words we know to tell you what an awesome love we are. When words are not enough to tell you of our love, just listen to our heart. We will use the words we know to tell you what an awesome love we are. Words are not enough to tell you of our love, just listen to our hearts.
Yes. When words are not enough to tell you of our love, just listen to our hearts. I can hear the coffee. It's good to be back and to be talking on so many great things, to have fellowship one with another. I don't know if you want to keep this, Alan, or not. We've been talking on the visions and visitations, and I went through the major ones. There have been others as we came through where that it's mostly encouragement. I remember in 2018, when I had cancer, the angel of the Lord stood there in the room, told me to keep my head up, and it's just another trial, and I will get through it. At that time, they were telling me I had stage 4 cancer. When the angel finished talking with me, they came in and said, "You don't have stage 4." They said, "You have between stage 2 and 3. It's all contained. We can get it." So they did. And so there have been times at the farm when the angel has dealt with me, give me certain things to say and look at. And but those were the major ones, and I wanted to kind of go through a summary this evening. And I titled it, Our Move Through the Aquarian Gateway. So everything that's happened since the opening of the seals has been a move into the Aquarian Gateway. We've been, 63 to 2023 would be 50 years, wouldn't it? Or would it be 60 years? Yeah.
60.
Yeah. So we're coming up on 60 years that we have pushed our way until here we are in 2022, and the orbits change. There's an Aquarian Gateway, and we have moved through it. So I wanted to talk on our move through the Aquarian Gateway. If you don't know what the Aquarian Gateway is, for those that might be listening or going to listen, it is an orbit that took place. Certain planets aligned themselves, and on February the 2nd of 2022 was the Aquarian Gateway opened, and in the orbits the Aquarian Gateway was opened as we moved into Aquarius in February. The gateway was opened, and it's opened until February 22nd. So, and at February the 22nd of 2022, the gateway in the orbits changed. But I thought it was kind of interesting that, the World War I was November the 11th, 1911 at 11:11 a.m. And I just thought it was really neat the way that lined up, because Putin went into Ukraine on February the 2022 at 2:22 a.m. their time in the morning. The Russians went into Ukraine. So it was almost like a parallel between World War I and this is taking place now as we move through. Now, the orbits changed. The Aquarian Gateway is not open there anymore, but I believe it was an open door to humanity, and that gateway is wide open now to enter into these things that are outside of the church ages and outside of rules, regulations, dominance, obedience, all kinds of things that the old hierarchy held. The Aquarian Gateway does away with that. So I want to talk just a little bit, go back through on a summary maybe. Paul in Hebrews 8, I think it was, he said this is the sum of it all, and he went back through a summary of everything he was trying to teach them. So maybe I'll just do that tonight. But I wanted to read this. It's in Esther, and it's Esther, the 4th chapter, the 1st verse. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, and if you've read Esther, all that was done, they were ready to, the king's ring was stamped, and they were ready to slaughter all the Jews in the whole nation. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, death was all around him. Mordecai rent his clothes, put on sackcloth with ashes, went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud voice, a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate. I like this. He came before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. So he could go to the king's gate, but he couldn't pass through the gateway as long as he was wearing sackcloth and ashes. Because inside the king's gate, there's no mourning, there's no sackcloth, there's no ashes, there's no bitterness, there's none of those things when you enter the king's gate. Well, that's what this Aquarian Gateway to me is a type of, or it's an allegory of, is how that we have entered in to the king's gate, or the Aquarian Gateway, and it's a whole nother universe, it's a whole nother world where that we are not caught up in the disdain and mundane things that are going on around the world. We're inside the throne room. We're in the King's Gate. And in there, you don't wear sackcloth and ashes. So we enter the Aquarian gateway, and all that have entered here do not wear sackcloth and ashes, as if judgment and condemnation hang over our heads. We entered a new day, a new world, a holistic age, wherein the sackcloth is removed, and it's a celebration of life that's happening now. That's what's going on. So we see that happening around us, and then Paul wrote in Galatians 4, that was Esther 4. In Galatians 4, Paul wrote, and he said, "Now I say that an heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all." So he already has all of the potential laying inside him. He's a child, he's an heir to everything, but as long as he is a child, he doesn't differ from a servant, though he is Lord of all. But he is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. Do you notice? He's under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. So as long as he is a son, he's under tutors and governors. But when he becomes the Father, until the time of the Father manifestation, which we are in now, until that time appointed of the Father, he's under tutors and governors and all sorts of things. Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law. So sonship came through woman under the law of tutors and governors and everything else. Jesus, you say, I don't know about that. William Branham made it very clear, and the seed is not heir with a shuck. He said Jesus was under tutors and governors. He was under Mary and Joseph. He was under those things until the appointed time. And Brother Branham made it very clear that Jesus, while he was in the womb of Mary, could not speak for himself. Mary and Joseph had to speak for him. But he said once he came on the scene and took over the business, he said he was no longer, nobody was speaking for him. He was speaking for himself. That's in Seed is Not Heir with a Shuck, February 1965. So we see that even Jesus had to grow up under tutors and governors, even though he was an heir and was Lord of all. So we see that happening. Now, he done this, made under the law, came through a woman, to redeem them that were under the law, or position us back where we were to start with. That's what redeem means, to bring back where you were to start with. So he came to redeem them, or to place them that were under the law back where they were, not under the law any longer. That's what he came to do. And he says to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. So that was an adoption into sonship. When Jesus died on Calvary, adoption took place under sonship, and it says that we might receive the adoption of sons, or adopted into sonship. So adoption is not a matter of like we think of it today. You know, you go down to an agency, you want a child, you fill out paperwork for an adoption, and you get a newborn child, or a child that's 3 or 4 years old. Whatever you get. That's not the adoption we're talking about. In the Old Testament, they had an adoption, which was the son of a father, the father didn't adopt the son to become his son. The father would raise them in the business, whatever it was they had, and then at a certain age, normally it's when you're ready to take over the father's business, whatever age that is, then they brought the son out publicly and they adopted him, not into the family, he's already in the family, they adopted him into the father's business. So we see this now. And because ye are sons, don't think that you became sons. Paul says very clearly, because you are sons, he has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So he sent us into sonship, and the whole time that we're in sonship, we're crying to move into the fatherhood and relationship. That's what he's saying. He sent forth the Spirit of his Son, or the Spirit, who we are, sent the attribute of sonship into humanity so that we could understand everything about sonship, and the whole time we're crying Abba Father, or we're wanting to move on out of sonship into fatherhood. Another way of saying this, what Paul wrote, now I say, we have transcended our adoption days and our walk with tutors and governors. We are one with the business. We are no longer in bondage unto the elements of this world, but they are one with us and are our tools for our understanding. We are no longer under any law. We were already sons in attribute, so we're not adopted as sons. We are adopted from sonship into the fatherhood. And adoption just means waking up to what we are, coming to the Father's business. We're already sons in attribute, and therefore we opened the sonship attribute in humanity and became one with the attribute of son, crying out to move further into the next manifestation. So adoption is over. Many people that I wrote on Facebook, said, what do you think about adoption? How does it apply today? There were many really great answers. And I just view it as there is no adoption. It's done. It's over. Predestination, we found out that predestination was given through the theophany to predestinate ourselves into the earth. Election is a certain, in the theophany, we made a decision to elect a certain piece of earth with a certain family in a certain geographical area. So we were predestinated into the earth, and a piece of earth was elected for us. And listen to me, when we took on that piece of earth and moved into humanity, you're adopted right there. You're a son of God. You're adopted into the sonship, and not in the way of somebody outside the family getting adopted. And you're always in the family. And when you're adopted in, it's over and it's done. Adoption took place at your birth. You don't have to worry about, am I adopted? Am I this? Am I that? Adoption is finished. It's done. Now, Hebrews 4 and 6, Paul goes on to say, seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein. So Paul is saying there is a place that those who remain enter into. We're the ones remaining after the church ages. Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. We know the story of Israel and Moses and the story of the church ages. Again, he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today if you will hear his voice, and harden not your hearts. Now listen very closely to Paul. He's talking about entering into something greater than where they were at. Paul says, for if Jesus, Jesus, the man that we so revere, if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterwards have spoken of another day? And Jesus spoke of another day. Read Matthew 22. Read the resurrection. Read these. Jesus spoke of another day. And yes, Jesus Christ on Calvary brought a rest, but he spoke of a greater rest in another day. If Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of the Spirit of God. So Paul was looking forward to another great rest that would be coming. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Now you know they didn't cease from their own works in the church ages. It was flooded with their own works and their own jealousies and their own gifts and their own individualism and everything else. And they didn't cease from their own works. But Jesus spoke of a day where we would cease from our own works. It would become a level playing field. The hierarchies would be gone. And we entered into sonship with the Spirit of the Father in the Son. Or the sonship is an attribute, and the Spirit of Father is in the Son. That's who we are. The other ages did not transcend sonship. They were still in sonship. When they come from Paul to Irenaeus, they were still in it. Irenaeus to Martin, and right on down the line to William Branham. All of it still in sonship with mediators and intercessors and tutors and governors and messengers and everything else to try to move them along. But here, the other ages didn't transcend. We have entered into the rest that Jesus spoke to us about. Into the Aquarian gateway. Into the fatherhood. Into the rest where the business is all ours. And we've entered into the rest that Jesus spoke to us about. This is the perfect rest after the opening of the seals. I could go back and just start reading you the things that the church age messenger said. Luther said he didn't even know whether he was saved or not, that he hoped by the grace of God that he had done enough things and enough good things to be saved. Those men were never in a total rest. I can show you where almost every one of them had those things. Paul said, I am the chief of sinners, and just on and on and on. They never had a total rest from sin, from duality, from, you could just go on and on and on with all the things, from exclusiveness, from rejection. They never had a rest. They didn't know how to rest. This is the perfect rest after the opening of the seals. No one could rest under tutors and governors and mediators and intercessors. We were constantly in struggle in our nature. But William Branham said when the seventh seal opened, it's the end of the struggling nature. When the seventh seal opens, it's the promise Jesus made that would come. Now, so we are now in the rest that was promised in Hebrews, that was promised all the way back through the scriptures. We've now entered in to that rest. The visitations and visions began to open to me after three major happenings. These three things aligned all the prophecies and opened the numerous prophecies about the second ride and the entering of love divine, which we have done. Now go back just a little bit. In 1991, we're pushing our way through the Omega age. We're pushing our way through tutors, governors, through intercessories, through mediation, people constantly raising up, trying to become the next messenger, trying to fill the shoes of William Branham, trying to do all these things. And so we had all that going on. And this numerous prophecies about the second ride, and they're entering in. In 1991 was my first missionary overseas trip to the Philippines. And as a young man, I went to the Bahamas and Haiti with somebody else and was just kind of there as an observer. But my first missionary trip, 1991, overseas to the Philippines. This opened a portal for me. And let me say once again, when I'm talking about me, it's us. This opened a portal for us to understand and realize the huge differences between the countries. You know, I was in America. I was growing up in America. I was 1991 would have put me at 37 years old, and I still had that whole concept that the whole world, you know. My cousin told me one time he went to Vietnam and he seen all these boys getting killed left and right all around him. And he lived in a little old town in Kentucky with maybe a couple of hundred people in it. And he said he always wondered when these boys would die, he'd think, how in the world are they going to get them all in that funeral home over there in Edmonton? That's all he knew. That's all he knew. He was laughing about it after he'd been overseas and he worked in countries all over the world and everything else. And he would laugh and he'd just say, I can't believe that I was thinking that way. But he said, I'd see somebody die and another one. And I'd think, how are they going to get all these boys into that one funeral home? Well, that's kind of the way I was living in America. It was all so nice and growing up. And sure, we were poor, but, you know, we had a roof, we had food, we had this, we had that, we had clothes. We went to school. It was nice. And 1991 opened my eyes up. I had traveled to the Bahamas and to Haiti and seen how other countries lived from a hotel, if you know what I mean. We stayed a certain place and we had certain meetings, but, you know, you didn't get with the people. But when I went to the Philippines, I learned exactly what was going on and the difference between countries and third world and second world and first world and all these things. So then in 1997, January, the sun rotated out of the house of Pisces and into the house of Aquarius. The sun, I'm talking about the orbits. The sun rotated out of Pisces and into Aquarius. This aligned the earth, the universe, the people, and their prophet up to where it was all in Aquarius and Leo. Perfect, if you look at the sundial, perfect communication, straight line communication. Everything began to open up. We begin to see many things. This aligned the earth and the universe with the people and their prophet. It opened the communication age. Pluto went into a certain orbit. Everything began to happen. By 2004, both the people and the spokesperson were in excellent communication together. Things were beginning to happen. We were beginning to see many things. We certainly weren't where we needed to be, but we were breaking the veils and the chains of all those old things. So it opened the communication age, and we moved into excellent communication. William Branham started this alignment at the opening of the seals. Then in 1998, we see that the October of 1998, the alignment in the earth of the three air signs, Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. They had already aligned in the heavens. But in the earth, in October, which is Libra, the alignment in the earth of the three air signs, Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. Jerry Almazon introduced me to Mita Edwardson. Jerry Almazon was a pastor in the Philippines. Mita was a pastor in New Zealand. And I was in the United States. And the three of us met up for the first time, October of 1998. And it was Aquarius, me, Gemini, Mita, Libra, Jerry Almazon. It was a portal in the earth that opened up and began to flood the air sign, which all the way back at the opening of the seals, William Branham moved us into Aquarius. The sun moved us in 1997, and in 1998, there we were. The air signs began to break open into the earth. This took us into the meeting in the air, wherein the mind began to focus and project a new hologram, a new day, beyond the church ages, even beyond the Omega age. Then in 2001, going through this, entering this gateway that we just entered, 2001, September the 11th, I think we all remember what happened that day. It brought the final judgment. It's a perfect type. Watch. Those seals closed out the church ages, and by 2001, 37 years later, bang, down come the Twin Towers in New York City, showing the end of the church ages, the judgments, everything else that was taking place. It brought the final judgment in symbol like General Titus of Rome upon Jerusalem. You remember Jesus was crucified in 33 AD, and General Titus of Rome went into Jerusalem, tore the temple down, destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, 37 years later. 2011, 37 years later. So we can see, or 2001, September 11, 30 years later. So we can see how everything was paralleling and everything was moving. So September the 11th, this opened the door for a new day. This finished the judgments. This finished the tutors, the governors, everything. It finished it all up. This opened the door for a new day after the judgments were over. And the visitations and visions to transition us would begin. Thus, they destroyed the temple in 70 AD, 37 years later after Jesus, and the Twin Towers were destroyed in 2001, September 11th, 37 years later, exactly the same after the opening of those seals. Now, we know that Osama bin Laden, destroyed the towers in 2001. We know that happened on a Tuesday morning about 8:20 a.m. And I knew that I was moving through a process. I didn't know where I was headed. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I wasn't going to last too much longer where I was at. My message just wasn't matching up with anybody I was around. And the more I seen it, the more I brought out, the harder it got to be able to live in it. And I love them to death. I love them all right now, every one of them. But they just weren't going to go where I was going to go. So there was the destruction, and I was supposed to be in New York City for our corporation. I sat on the board. I was going to New York City, and I was going to take some of the new members through the Twin Towers, the number one tower. And I was supposed to be there at 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning, September the 11th. Well, I realized that our meetings weren't even going to start until that afternoon, late afternoon. And I thought, why do I want to fly in there a day early just to give somebody a tour through the towers? I've done it 1,000 times. So I called up one of my friends in New York City and said, can you take these new members through the Twin Towers tomorrow morning? That was on Monday evening. He said, yes, I can do that. Don't you worry about it. So they went over and they went through the towers, and they were all gone. They were all killed in the process when the towers were bombed by the airplanes and the towers fell. Some of their bodies were never found, some were, but they were all gone. And I thought, that would have been me. That it really shocked me. When I woke up on Tuesday morning, my wife said, you better come in here and watch, see what's happening. Because I was getting ready to fly out. And so I went in there and looked. I said, oh, wow, my words, this is terrible. So I called, and they said, no, don't even try to fly in. Don't even try it. And for days and days, you couldn't fly in. So, but I would have been there normally in the Twin Towers on September 11th, and I would have been the 8th person. There was 7 that they were showing, and then the one who took my place, the 8th person, they were all in the towers and gone. And I thought about that, 8th day person, the 8th person, and it still weighs on my mind exactly what all of that meant, but it was opening up so many things to me. So we seen that William Branham, it was September the 11th, 2001, when the towers fell. The judgments took place about 8 a.m. I chose not to go. And then in 2002, just a few months later, April the 11th, opened the first visitation. And then the planets aligned on May the 2nd of 2002. And William Branham, I don't know if you know it or not, but he was entombed, buried on April 11th, 1966. So April 11th is kind of becoming a big a big date, when I was looking at all of it. And so he was buried in Jeffersonville, Indiana. The second ride prophecies were opened, moving across the earth, when all of these things started happening. In 2001, the Twin Towers, the judgments. In 2002, the visitation, April 11. And then looking back at William Branham, the April 11th, when he was buried, then we moved into a new day. 2003, the angel gave us the promise. I read this vision to you. Actually, a visitation. The angel gave us the promise of our protection under the political and military scene that was going on. Do you think that promise has been lifted? Are you afraid of the political things that are going on? Are you afraid of the scene that's out there? Are you afraid that Russia and China and the Great Bear and the Red Dragon and whoever else we can pick off, the eagle and everything? Are you really afraid of all that? When we received 20 years ago a message from our angel telling us that we had a promise of our protection under the political and military scene, while the progression of the message revealed the Omega Age and how it was opening it up. We called it the Third Testament then, but it revealed the Omega Age and how it was coming to its short, quick fulfillment as the time of the second ride was taking place. We were beginning to see all the prophecies of the second ride and all the things that were supposed to happen and the great mysteries that were supposed to be open. We began to see it all, and it was a short, quick fulfillment as the second ride. The seed was protected all the way through it. And in 2004, after we received the promise of our protection, I'll be with you always. You don't have to worry about a thing. I'll move all the obstacles out of your way. We have that promise. You and I have that promise today. Then in 2004, the visitation of the rod, the pen in my hand, the rod that was in J.T. Parnell's hand, who he gave to William Branham, and the rod that was in William Branham's hand, who he gave to us. He gave it to us. We are carrying that rod, that authority in us right now. And it's a rod that we rule the world with a rod of iron. What is iron? It's the flesh. It's what we're made up of. It's the elements. And we're here now in the elements, walking through this world in a great walk, moving towards and moving through the gateway now. So this visitation of the rod, the revealing of a real-time measurement, we began to understand the blending of theophany and humanity at that time in 2004. Do you remember how that we were having such a great time understanding that the theophany is not out there in the sky somewhere. The theophany is not whispering in my ear. The theophany is me. And it's in my midst all the time. And I am it, and it is me. And the theophany is not outside us. It's not some realm out there somewhere. It is us. And we were having such a great time with that. And we placed the theophany as our human spirit. If you remember back, we placed the theophany as our human spirit entering into us at the birth process. And then we said it goes through a growth. We said it took on amnesia. I don't know if that's true now or not. I honestly don't think we took on amnesia. I just think we took on a carnality when we put on flesh. And now the carnality and the theophany were wrestling one with the other, trying to figure out who's what, when, where, and why all these things were happening. And now we've gotten to a point we're not even worried about that anymore. We are taking the theophany and the carnality minds and the mind, those attributes, and we're meshing them together and making them one and becoming a very spiritual people. So this was going on. Theophany as our human spirit entering at the birth process. The new words in the heavens. You remember? It was splitting the words, splitting the heavens, and new words were forming. The explosion in the earth, the moving of the two trees. So many things that were going on with us at the same time. That vision was just symbolics. Trees and pins and rods and everything else. That was all symbolics of what was really going on with us in the earth. We were catching an understanding. We were moving out of the Omega age, quickly moving out of the second ride that William Branham so much prophesied about. The new words in the heavens, the explosion of the earth, the moving of the two trees, so many things were opening to us. In 2004, we left the old system on Memorial Day weekend. I said, what are you talking about, Brother Parnell? We were in an old system where I just put it like this. The 3 years from 2002 to 2004, 2002, 3, and 4, were very difficult years for me, as my visions and visitations were not being accepted by my home church at that time. I struggled, and my angel was admonishing me with strong messages to move on. And you know what? I kept thinking, I can stay here. I can help. I can be with these people. I've been with them many years. They'll listen. I'll have to struggle, but they'll listen. Well, it went 3 years, and the angel kept dealing with me to move on. Get out of it. Well, in 2004, we left the old system on Memorial Day weekend. The 3 years in 2002 through 2004 were very difficult years for me, as my visions were not being accepted by my home church at that time. I struggled, and my angel was admonishing me with strong messages and rebukes. Move on. I remember Brother Mitta Edwardson, he asked me one day, he said, how long are you going to stay in that? He said, I thought you would have been gone a long time ago. But I wanted to help people. I wanted to move them forward. I wanted to bring them with me. It's kind of like Abraham. Get out of your the land where you're at and don't take anything with you, and move over into this new land, strange land, where I will lead and guide you. So what's Abraham do? He packs up his father, he packs up his son-in-law, he packs up everybody, and he takes them with him. Then the angel had to deal with Abraham to separate all that out of him, to move Lot out and let his father die, and on and on and on. The angel had to deal with it another way. It didn't make it any less, and it didn't mean that Abraham didn't get the job done. But there was just another way to go about it. If you're not willing to be ushered and to ride with the driver, the Holy Spirit, in the car, then he'll tie you to the bumper and he'll drag you along. But you're going to get where you're going. So on June the 11th, 2004, Memorial Day, we left that old system and all of those things where people were trying to tell us what we could and couldn't preach, where people were telling me, you can't, when you go to Africa, you can only say this and this and this. When you go to the Philippines, you can only say this and this and this. They were holding me back. And even one time, the pastor at that time, he said, I think I'm just going to keep you at home, and I'll go some myself, and I'll take other people and train them. That was right about the time that I'd done the salute. And I'm on my way. But anyway, it was all us. We were moving through these things. On June 11th, 2004, was my first ministry. June the 11th, you remember the baptismal of William Branham, June the 11th, baptizing so many people, and he's on his 17th person. And it was funny. June the 11th, 2004 was my first ministry without any strings attached. No one was trying to tell me what to do, how to preach, what doctrines you needed to believe, how to act, what your manners should be, on and on and on. June 11th, 2004 was my first ministry without any strings attached, no elders telling me what to do, what I could and couldn't minister. The door of revelation, the portals began to open rapidly for me from that moment on, as new words of life were filling up the hearts and minds of the people everywhere that I went, because I was bringing a new message. Now, to that message that I had then compared to today, well, it was a starter. It was good. You get those little flame things for a starter, but it wasn't really the fire. It was a starter. And so then on July the 4th, Independence Day in America, was my first message to go across the world as a free person. Sent it out everywhere, opening what was in my heart to the people. I still held to some absolutes, William Branham, the Bible, I held to a lot of absolutes for a while. I still held to some absolutes, but I was well on my way to shedding those idols. Remember I talked to you about the 2015 visitation? The idols, those men were idols to me. I had to remove them all. Well, I began to shed those idols, rules, regulations, dogmas, and creeds of the church age dispensation, and of all of those men, and I knew them all. I grew up under them. I knew J.T. Parnell. I knew Don Ruddle. I knew Junior Jackson. I knew Brother Beeler. I knew Brother Metcalf. I knew Brother Neville. I knew Brother Howard Capps. And I preached for all of them and dealt with all of them. But when this Independence Day came, and I realized who I was and what I was doing, and how that all of those brethren were great men who helped me along the way, but I had my own message. I had my own understanding. And I needed to get out there and minister it. In 2006, we did all of that. We come all the way through. In 2006, the vision of our walk, our transformation into oneness, going from the man to the wolf to the eagle and into the sun, breaking into the backside. the vision of our walk and transformation to oneness. The transition in the second ride was rapid, and a short, quick ministry was moving us into the speed of love divine. The Omega age was extremely important. We were in it. It was extremely important as it set up the platform for our present day outside of all the church age connections. And I look back at those days in the Omega age, and I look back at all the places that I traveled and all of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, I would say even millions, that I ran into, that I was the best example that I could be. I tried to bring things to them on a new platform. And being back there, it was a very important time where it just kind of laid out a platform that we could move right on over into where we moved in 2014. Now, 2008, the understanding of the second ride prophesied by Brother William Branham was well upon us as we were breaking many veils of the old church age. We were breaking all of the concepts of those old church ages, the hierarchies, the dualities, and demons, and all kinds of things that we were beginning to break and realize these were very thick veils and they were not what we thought they were. 2008 really began to break those things for us as we were breaking many veils of the old church age understanding. Pastor Mitta's visitation, opening to him his commission. I don't know if you've ever heard him tell about it or not, but he was in a certain place. He and his wife, he was fasting. He went into a vision, and Pastor Mitta's visitation, opening to him his commission of identifying the prophet to the second ride. This angel, this pillar of fire that appeared to him, told him, you're going to identify, it's your commission to identify the prophet. And Pastor Mitta's visitation, opening him his commission, identifying the prophet to the second ride, was well before the people. His visitation to the USA with me was very significant to what was happening. It had opened, he caught the revelation, he brought it out that the prophet to the second ride was here. It was going on, and we saw it go through a quick, short work. In 2009 in Cameroon, very important. I was at Pastor Innocent Ubi's place. The opening of the cloud. I was talking about the cloud. I remember sitting in the hotel room and I was reading. And I looked and I saw where Brother Branham talked about he had moved into the cloud. It's in the seventh seal. He had went into the cloud. And he met the messengers. And he said, but I saw this people in the cloud. And he said, I kept wanting to go and talk with them. And he said, I went there. Well, that was in 2009 in Cameroon, the opening up of that cloud and our catching of that understanding, and that group of angels in the cloud that William Branham met in 1960 were those angels that were there and are his converts that he wanted to meet, and it was their turn or their time or their season to start coming into the earth and opening up many of these great mysteries. And there was a convert of his that helped him understand a lot of what was going to happen down the road for him. So the people of a new world talking with William Branham in the cloud at Sunset Mountain, and one of his converts was helping him to understand the dimensions and what was going on and what was going to happen next and how Jesus would descend into the earth, how all these things would happen. This angel told him how it would be. And that was in 2009 in Cameroon when we caught that understanding and we saw these things and ministered those at Pastor Ubi's place. And it brought on a much greater understanding of where we were at in our age and in our time. Then in 2010, we visited twice India. It was the India Visitations. We were in India twice in 2010, fulfilling the vision of India that Brother Branham had, where that he said that he saw this message. He saw a great opening in Kenya, in Uganda, and in India. And I had traveled to Kenya. I had traveled to Uganda. I did not even care if I ever went to India. But I knew that in the back of my mind, this second ride had opened up. We had opened it up in Kenya. We had opened it up in Uganda, and there were people who were understanding it. And then Brother Illyrio wrote me and said, Brother Parnell, you need to come to India. I've been following your message for months and months. It is perfect. It is straight in order with everything that's going on today. And so in 2010, we went to India. We were in India twice. And the starting of the website that you now can go to, and I think there's somewhere around 8 million people a year that visit it. It's just an amazing, it's a great thing. I had my own. I had a website. I remember starting a website with Brother Illyrio Saldana. I remember his offering to me and how I was ecstatic that he would take the website. I was to have someone who could take it much further than me. That's what I wanted. But I remember he asked me, it's funny, Brother Illyrio said, who takes care of your website? I knew what he meant. It was pitiful. And I said, well, me. I do it myself. He said, I thought so. He said, would you mind me building a website for you? And so that was in 2010. And that, I'm telling you, between he and I and Brother Mitta and the meetings and all the things that happened in India in 2010 and him taking the website was one of the very biggest moves that brought us into literal millions and millions of people across the earth. So, a little over 8 million a year visit it and understand our vibration. They understand our frequency. They write me. They write me on YouTube. They write me on Messenger. They write me on Facebook. They write me, just on and on and on. The website, everywhere. In 2011, we were beginning to move into a completely new understanding. In 2011, this message began to open to me in a small field of oneness. I could see that the whole concept of God and the devil was just processes, and it was made up things by man. I could see many things. I could see the angelic age and how that we were beginning to take on the angelic ministries. I could see humanity and how that humanity was Christ. My angel told me to take these things. They would do not minister them. You know where my assembly was at that time. He said, do not minister this in your assembly first. It will not be accepted by the majority. Proved out to be right. My angel told me these things would not be accepted in my own assembly. The majority would not. And to prepare for what would happen in the future. I knew what he meant. I was going to have to move on. Then, in 2011, when he told me to take these things to the Philippines and open them, then I was blocked from traveling by our government. They wouldn't let me travel. I couldn't take it anywhere. We weren't yet doing a lot of great things on the computers, and I couldn't take it anywhere. It was a very rough time for me. I was blocked from traveling by the government, but I knew the Lord wanted me to open these things that I was seeing in the Philippines. That's what the angel of the Lord dealt with me, and we were supposed to take it and open it in the Philippines. Well, I couldn't. 2011 went by, 2013 went by, and we come into 2014. 11 to 13, I was digging into the message of William Branham. I was looking at many other great men of understanding as my absolutes that I had, all kinds of different things. And my dominance and control in my spirit, that I wanted to control everything, was beginning to subside. So I needed those 3 years. I needed those 3 years to get Don Parnell's ego out of all of it. And I knew that when I began to minister these things, I was 3 years in our own assembly, and I knew I couldn't bring them. I would just say little things here and there. I knew I couldn't bring them because it was going to be rejected. And in 2014, it was. So here we are, and I'm in this 3-year period where that it's almost like just a waiting period, an incubation period. And I was just pouring things in from William Branham, from many of the other brothers in the message, books that I had, George Pike, and just on and on and on, just pouring them in. What the brother that wrote a message, or wrote a book called The Third Testament, I can't remember his name now, but I was looking at all of these things and just pouring them in and pouring them in, and just going down to the church and just kind of doing my thing, and just waiting. And as we were there, the message of William Branham, I was looking at it, other great men, the dominance of my spirit was diminishing, and I was seeing the world and humanity as Christ, no longer Antichrist and devils and everything else. It was starting to pick up for me, and I was beginning to see what was going on all around us. I saw the Antichrist had ended, the Omega age was finishing up, and the testaments closed and sealed away and put away, and there was nothing left to do in the testaments. I seen that. It was a new day breaking before my eyes. The ban was lifted in 2014, and I could travel overseas again. Well, in 2014, April, we went to New Zealand, and the understanding of duality was diminishing completely. We saw a universal changing of soul in New Zealand. We caught the understanding that we were already changed universally, and wearing the coat, the spoken word made flesh. I remember ministering that at Brother Vela's place, and the minister that I was with at the time, he was controlling everything, and he stood up and said, "He preached that, I didn't." But I knew it wasn't being accepted. So in 2014, in December, we entered the Philippines after the New Zealand ministry, after the kind of breaking open of the universal change, and all the things that took place there. In 2014, December, we entered the Philippines in Butuan. We're moving through this Aquarian gate. Butuan, meaning the seed. And it was in Mindanao, which means the promised land. So we entered into the seed in the promised land. And by the end of that journey, traveling from Mindanao to Bicol to Pangasinan and into Manila, by the end of that journey, we brought the prodigal son home. We brought Lucifer home. We got rid of duality. We brought the prodigal son home to be with the Father. We were celebrating a new day, a new feast. This new message was open to the people in Bicol, removing the duality. I had a couple of ministers with me, and I remember one of them was due to speak. And I stood up and I spoke my message, and I went into how there's no more duality, there's no more twos, there's no more white dog, black dog, we're light and darkness. And I brought that whole concept of duality, pulled it into one, and said there's no such thing as God and Satan and all these things. And when I did that, this minister that was with me, he stood up and he said, I just don't even know what to preach now. And he sat down, and I thought, well, that makes me feel good that he caught it. At least he knew none of that old stuff was going to do any good anymore. So this new message was open to the people in Beagle, removing the duality. True oneness was the concept. And that opening brought us to our present understanding of humanity, the merging of light and darkness, the one spirit, all of those things. And that was that trip in the Philippines. I came back home, and it was March of 2015, March the 8th, the day that William Branham was on Sunset Mountain, March the 8th, 1963. 2015, March the 8th, was the visitation of angels taking us through the new frequency, the field of fire. You heard me talk about it, the 4 angels, and how that we had to lay our idols down. We had to move on. We were in the valley of decision. That was March the 8th, 2015. And at the same time, I was getting a lot of kickback from the ministry in my assembly, from the people in my assembly, not understanding why I was bringing out these things and bringing out oneness and bringing out humanitarianism and bringing out Christ and doing away with the Antichrist. They were all just really having a tough time with it. So I was working through that struggle. And March the 8th, 2015, was the visitation of angels taking us through the new frequency. And they were telling me, honestly, they were telling me you can stay there where you're at with them, and it'll be a sad defeat. Or you can move on. It's time to move on into this unknown, finishing the concepts of numbered testaments, finishing the concepts of the second ride, finishing the concepts of the church ages, finishing all those things and putting them aside. A new field open, and I chose to step into it, to step into the unknown. I said, I will do it. 2015, we did it. We went back to the Philippines in October of 2015. The reason I'm saying this is our move into the Aquarian Gateway. All of these things, this wasn't Don Parnell. This was us. This was we coming through all of these things. We came through it together. We broke through all of these extremely hard veils. That's what the angel said the ministry was to do, was to break through all of these veils. And this visitation of angels helped. October of 2015 was the Philippine visitation. I went back there. The awakening and identity forming for the different nations. As everyone was watching, as the message was coming out, many were dissenting, just saying, we're leaving. I understood. But the angel told me right at the very start of this journey, be prepared. There will be many casualties, just as the mechanics were not right in the astronaut in the ship. Their mechanics are not right, and there's going to be many casualties. And there was, and there is, and occasionally there still is. So we had this going on. The awakening, the identity forming for the different nations, starting in the Philippines. Things begin to heat up, and things begin to, as this message began to break and we began to break through the veils, many were left behind. In America, the same way. Many were left behind. And in Ghana, the same way. And in Cameroon, same way. In Gabon, Nigeria, New Zealand, all this was going on. It was an understanding of oneness that was breaking forth, and nobody wanted to focus the binoculars and get one object. They kept wanting to look at a duality, God and Satan. Well, when I was there in 2015, we broke into that contrast. Christ, Antichrist, all those things were breaking. Many casualties across the globe were occurring because they didn't want to correct the mechanics. They didn't want to come to one spirit, one understanding, one life, one form of eternal life, Zoe, that's it. There's no other forms of life. And so it kept a grind going. It was a contrast. In my heart, I wasn't wanting to watch all of this break up. But at the same time, I knew that it was what the angel of the Lord told me would happen. So I kept my eyes focused. I kept my heart clean. I kept moving forward. And as I moved forward, many casualties took place across the globe. Many fellowships broke up. And many things happened during that period of time. And in 2016, I seen in the middle of all that breaking up, I seen a youth rising up in 2016. The things that we were ministering, I remember one lady coming to me in the church I used to have, and she said, I'm not seeing what you're preaching. And some of my ministers doing the same thing. I don't see what you're preaching, and I'll just stay quiet, because it looks like the youth is getting it all over the world. They're picking it up, so maybe it's for them. Finally, what happened. They broke up, broke away, and all those things. But in 2016, the youth across the world and in the message were seeing it, and I thought it was really neat, because right in the middle of all of it raising up, getting writings from everywhere, here comes the youth out in the Philippines, and they sing Heal the World. And I thought, wow, look at that. That's exactly where we're at. And we are all moving through this gateway. So the ministry is breaking forth in the youth and in the leaders. Oh my, just look at how many there are today, leading and guiding people in groups and fellowships and families all across the world. And so they were rising up as the message rises to a new height and moves into humanity. In May, the things my angel showed me in May of 2016, the things my angel showed me about major changes in my message began to take place, and continued casualties took place as we moved through the veils of both physical and spiritual nature. You say, Brother Parnell, what do you feel is going to happen to those people? I love them with all my heart. I feel that they just chose a different path. And their path, it's like I talked about it before, it's like a maze. You get inside a maze, and it's all enclosed, and you choose a path, and you go so far, and it might be a dead end. You got to turn around, come back, go another way, turn around, come back. But there's only one way out of the maze. Everybody's going to get out of the maze sooner or later. Now, they may run into dead ends and beat their heads against the wall and wonder what in the world's going on and how come they can't find their way through. But when it's all said and done, there's a door out of the maze, and everybody goes to that door and they get out of the maze. So I'm not worried about them getting out of the maze. I just hate to see them banging their heads so much and going to all these dead ends and everything else, trying to minister things that are dead and from the past. So in May, the angel showed me about major changes, and we begin to break those veils. We move through those. 2018 to 21. For me, for us, it's you and me. 2018 to 21 were very difficult years for us as our body started rejecting all the other forms that were within us. You know how you have form something foreign in you, your body will reject it. Well, we had ministered, we had opened our hearts up to a new day, a new world, a new body, a new this, and new that. And 2018 to 21 was a time our body started rejecting all of the forms within us. We didn't want all of that hierarchy. We didn't want all of that churchy stuff. We didn't want just on and on and on. We didn't want any of those things. We began to reject them all. Cancer, tumors, hernias, septic. 5 major operations to get my body in order. And I feel good today. I feel great compared to what I used to feel like. But I went through 3 years of hell getting my body in order. And I know was a representative of what was going on in us. We had many things in us that were foreign objects that needed to be expelled, expunged from our body. And we were doing that for 3 years. During this time, many great men and women were raising up in consciousness, stepping forward across the globe. We were correcting ourselves both in the physical and in the spiritual realms. We had all these things going on in us. And in 2021, the angelic movement in our attribute, we began to see that. It was just last year, 2021, we seen how that we were moving into the angelic age. It began to open up to us. We began to understand who we were. We began to understand there's not a bunch of angels floating around out in the air. Angels are attributes in us. It's things that we will bring out. It's things that we will be. It's a meshing together of theophany or angelic and human traits, and we pull them together. And we're still coming to the understanding as to what this does for us. We're still working on those things. It's happening now in 2022. Humanity, angelic nature, building within us to bring us into a greater humanity with everything we needed within. That was one of the greatest things that happened to us as we began to turn inward and take a look of what was going on inside us. In 2022, we came to the Aquarian Gateway. It opened in the orbits. We had the 2014, we had the Grand Cross, and we kept coming down through. In 2022, we have the Aquarian Gateway. We had a stellium, Aquarian stellium. In 2021, we had a Capricorn stellium at the start of 2022, which are all major happenings in the orbits. Everything was changing. And then we come to February of 2022. The Aquarian Gateway opened from February the 2nd, 22, and the orbits remained open and in alignment for that Aquarian Gateway until 2/22/22. And when we had entered the spiritual aspects of the Aquarian Gateway, here we entered in, we caught the spiritual aspects of it. We realized that we've stepped into a new world, the other side of the sun, so to speak. Remember the eagles flying and the eyes, and we were flying and breaking into the sun. That's the last great veil. Remember, who was it? Joel, that gave a prophecy when the new world, the church ages came. He said that the sun will cease to give its light, the moon will turn to blood, and on and on and on. Well, you never seen any moon turn to blood. You never seen the sun quit giving its light. It was symbolic, an allegory of a new world coming on the scene. Sun and moon represent new world. Well, when we flew into the sun as eagles, back there in that transformation, it was symbolic and an allegory of us flying into a new creation, past the sun, the moon, past all of those things, and breaking to the other side into a brand new world. At the same time, Putin, Russia, went to war with Ukraine. on 2/22/22 at 2:22 a.m. Just right down to, and you know what all those 22s and 2s represent. It's the 11 power base, the greatest power day. Say April 11, William Branham went in. April 11, he came back out of in 66 and 2002. He went into the grave and he come back out of the grave in New York. He said, watch New York City. Go read it for yourself. He said, watch New York City. Something about that city. Well, that's where he came back. And he gave us some great understanding for the second ride. This is significant for us to understand that Ukraine is a new nation. It broke out of the old USSR. I think the USSR stood for United Soviet Socialist of Russia. Ukraine broke out of there. It's a brand new nation, a brand new day. And Putin is symbolic of that old church age mentality of domination and rulership, trying to bring back the old Russian Empire. He wants that old empire back. And I'm telling you, in the pulpits, every Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday night, you hear a bunch of preachers wanting to bring back the old system all the time. They're constantly wanting to bring back the old system. We have broken out. It's a brand new day for us. We don't want to go back into those systems. We have no worries as we watch the political and the religious and the economic realms. They're reeling. They're just reeling and rocking from the movement going on in the vibrational spiritual realm that we are in today. That's what's happening all around us. I have, you have, we have a protection. I will protect you from the political and the military things that are going on. I will be with you always. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. We have that promise. Don't worry. These things are all just allegories, and we're breaking through the veils as we catch them and understand them. It will continue to happen as we watch the world adjust to the Aquarian age, to the Aquarian gateway, a gateway that takes us into a whole new day, a gateway that brings the Grand Cardinal Cross to life. It brings us into new day. It brings us into new atmospheres. It gives us compassion, understanding. It gives us empathy. It gives us shape shifting. It gives us transformation. We can move through the transformation. We're free of every man's thoughts. We're free of every man's way. We're free of all the doctrines, the rules, and the regulations. We are now the Holy Spirit moving in the earth in our carnality. Our carnality and our theophany are one now. We don't have to worry. We don't have to fight. We don't have to hold them separate and dual and say, I can't do this. I got to stay away from this and that. That's not it anymore. We are, the carnality and the theophany have come together. They're sorting through. They're making great things happen to bring us to spirituality. This recap, this rehearsal of what was going on down through the age, down through those ages from 1963 until now. This rehearsal and this recap of our journey to the present. It has been a blessing for everyone. Even the ones who walked away. It's been a great blessing for them. I see them. I see them going into things that they're doing. I see them in their own lives. I see they're not hurt. They just chose a different path. And I'm okay with that. Take the path and go. But this path is the one where I believe that we can break the most veils. We can move into the understanding that we want to move into. We can break open love divine, and we can begin to look beyond all of this hierarchy, all of this regulations and rules, and all of this church age stuff. There's still some of it left in all of us. I feel the chains in me. I hear one drop every once in a while. I just hear clink, I think, okay, I just dropped another one. It's okay. You say, I'm not there yet, Brother Parnes. It's okay. It's okay. Doesn't matter how fast you move, whether you're a turtle or a rabbit. Just get to the finish line. That's the thing. Love bless you all as we move forward in our walk, in our understanding. Anything that we don't understand. Someone said, what do we do? There are things that I don't understand. I fear the unknown. Anything that we don't understand just hasn't had the veil pulled back yet. Stop worrying about it. If there's something that you don't understand, it's just something about you. It's no big deal. It's not a scary thought. It's just something about you. And as you picked up the understanding for many of these other things, you'll pick up the understanding to more and more and more unknown things, because we are breaking the veils. We moved through the gateway, and it's wide open to us now. We have an understanding of who we are. Anything that we don't understand, it's just that the veil hasn't been pulled back. And when the veil is pulled back, we're going to find out whether we like it, whether it's acceptable or not, whether it's good or however we think of it. It's just going to be about you. That's all it is. You are the Antichrist. You are the Jezebel. You are the Christ. You are the Jesus. You are the William Branham. You are the tree with all the great fruits on it, and you're the barren tree. You're all of it. You're all of it. So when something is ready to be pulled back, don't say, oh no, this might destroy me. No, it's going to make you. It's going to make you, because you're pulling back the veils about you. It's just things we don't understand about ourselves, because we're all things. What else could be revealed other than us? We're it. When I say us, I'm not talking about our little group sitting here or humanity. What else can be pulled back? What other veil can shock us so bad? We keep pulling them back off of humanity, off of ourselves, and we adjust. We adjust, we accept, we step into it, we become holistic. We say, those things that I just unveiled, the inappropriate things, I will fix them. And the things that are in tune, I will add them to my tools and keep moving. And that's what we need to do. We need to have that understanding. It's things that we don't understand about ourselves, because we're all things. What's behind this veil, Brother Parnell? You. What's behind that veil, Brother Parnell? What's behind the veil of oneness? You. What's behind the veil of the Antichrist? You. What's behind the veil of inclusiveness? You. What's behind the veil of exclusiveness? You. What's inappropriate, fix it. What's not inappropriate, use it and keep moving. That's where we're at in our day and in our message. I'm not looking for exploding things and great shocking news, and like George Bush and all of them that said the shock and awe. Not looking for it. Not looking for it. It's us. And let's keep pulling the veils back. I seen a little thing on Facebook. It said the apocalypse is here. The veils are being pulled back. Don't be afraid. Just hold on to one another and keep pulling. Keep pulling back the veils. That's what this is about. Keep pulling back the veils. We step through the gateway. Keep moving. Keep moving. We're in oneness now. Keep moving.
Heaven's perfect melody, the Creator's symphony. You are singing over me.
love song. Love bless. Everything is yours. Everything is yours.